The park was quiet this morning, a soft breath of sun pouring over dew-laced grass. Amara Jenkins walked the familiar loop around the perimeter trail, a reusable coffee cup warm in her palm, her other hand absently stroking the leash of an older Labrador beside her. This was her ritual early mornings before the world stirred too loudly, before her phone buzzed with client questions or another neighbor asked about behavioral tips. Peace lived in these moments. The birds, the distant laughter of school kids on their way to the bus stop, the crisp air that carried no judgment. She had built this life after years of struggle, a tidy home, a dog training center with her name on the glass, a reputation for kindness and quiet strength. In this town where stares lingered too long and assumptions came faster than greetings, Amara had learned to shrink her joy small enough to survive. But today something shifted. As she passed the playground, she felt it first in her gut, a tightening, a murmur of instinct. Her eyes were drawn across the street to a black and white cruiser, idling by the curb. Behind the wheel, Officer Daniel Holt. His posture's stiff eyes locked on her with a tension that stripped the morning bare. Next to him, a large German shepherd. A police dog paced with low growls, ears pinned forward. Then Holt stepped out, letting the leash slack just enough for Koda to lunge. "You don't belong here," he barked. Koda's growls echoed. Amara's hand trembled. Something bad had begun. Amara Jenkins had learned early that silence didn't always keep you safe. She was born in this very town, Springfield Heights, where the air always seemed to hum with the polite lies of tolerance. Her mother cleaned houses on the east side where lawns were manicured and stairs were sharp. "Keep your head down," her mother used to say. "Smile, be polite, and don't give them a reason." But it hadn't saved her brother Marcus, who was 15 when a stop and frisk turned violent. Bruised ribs, broken pride, no apology. The officer had been within policy. That officer, Daniel Holt's older cousin. Amara had buried those years deep, trying to build something better. She got pregnant at 19. The father vanished, and the whispers followed. Another statistic, they said. But she had her son Elijah, and she had dogs. Creatures who saw past the noise, past skin and circumstance. They listened. They learned. And Amara, through patience and instinct, learned how to lead them. She opened Jenkins' canine training and earned a quiet respect from families across the county. Still, she walked carefully. She taught her son to be cautious around police, to never raise his voice, to always say, "Sir." She had hoped to protect him, to give him the peace she never knew. But that morning in the park, Holt's words and Koda's aggression weren't just for her. They were a message to her, to Elijah, to every black child who dared to feel safe. And something cracked in Amara. The years of caution, of making herself small, of pretending not to hear what was meant for her ears, those years ended. She couldn't let this pass, not this time. Not with Elijah watching. She went home, stood in front of the mirror, and said aloud, "I will not be silent." Decision made. The next morning, Amara dressed with quiet precision, black jeans, a denim shirt, hair pulled into a tight bun. Her phone was charged, camera app open and ready. Elijah watched her from the kitchen table, still in his pajamas, his cereal soggy from inattention. "Where are you going, Mom?" he asked. "To do what's right," she said simply. "I need you to be brave while I do something hard." He nodded the way kids do when they know something serious is happening. She kissed his forehead and walked out the door. The Springfield Heights Police Department sat like a fortress on the corner of Main Street, a squat red brick building flanked by flagpoles and a newly painted Back the Blue mural. As Amara stepped inside, the cool air hummed with fluorescent lighting and a kind of practiced indifference. A white male sergeant sat at the reception desk reading a newspaper. "I need to file a complaint," she said, placing her phone discreetly on the counter camera lens facing upward. The sergeant barely glanced at her. Against who? Officer Daniel Holt. The man's posture shifted, and for a moment the newspaper folded lower, revealing narrowed eyes. "What for?" "For threatening me and attempting to incite violence using his dog. I have video proof." He didn't ask to see it. Instead, he tapped on his desk and muttered, "Wait here." A few moments later, she was told, "We'll review it internally." No form, no record of her statement, no copy of her complaint. On her way out, Amara spotted Holt leaning against his cruiser in the lot like he'd been expecting her. His mirrored sunglasses glinted in the mid-morning sun. Koda sat by his side still and quiet. "You're making a mistake," Holt said, voice low and confident. Amara kept walking. "You really want to stir this up? I thought you were smarter than that." Koda stood slowly, his ears twitching toward Amara, but this time he didn't growl. "I want the truth," she replied without turning. "That scares you, doesn't it?" That night she called Maya Torres. Maya had been her friend since high school, the only other girl in their class who understood what it meant to be both brown and bold. Now Maya was a rising journalist at the local digital paper, the Heights Herald. She listened as Amara explained everything: the threat in the park, the police station. Brush off the tension in Holt's voice. "You still got that footage?" Maya asked. "Every second." "Good. We start tonight." While Maya dug into Holt's service record, Amara began speaking out online. She posted her own video, a calm, clear explanation of the park encounter, naming Holt and calling out the danger of silence. The clip got a few hundred views in the first day. Mostly support. A few trolls. Then the threats came. A voicemail from a blocked number dropped the complaint. Nobody wants trouble. A typed note shoved under her windshield wiper. "Keep barking and the leash won't save you." And then Holt's partner, a younger officer named Barnes, found her at the grocery store. "You don't want to do this, Amara," he said, one hand resting on the cart's edge. "Just let it go. Things could get messy." Messy. The word clung to her skin like sweat. She didn't tell Elijah everything just enough. "There are people who don't want me speaking up," she told him over dinner, but that's how things change when someone refuses to be quiet. Maya's voice came through the phone later that night, tense and focused. "There's more on Holt than I thought," she said. "Complaints, all unofficial. Harassment claims, excessive force, even a civil suit that disappeared in settlement court." Amara felt her stomach turn. "How is he still in uniform?" "Same reason they always are," Maya replied. And just like that, the battle lines were clear. It wasn't just Holt. It was everything behind him: the system that shielded him, the silence that kept him powerful, and the town that looked the other way. Amara knew she had stepped into something far deeper than a personal grudge. This was a system used to people like her backing down. But she wasn't backing down. Not anymore. By the end of the week, Amara felt the shift. Not just the stares, those had always been there, but something deeper, colder, more deliberate. When she walked through town now, it was as if a line had been drawn. One side watched her with narrowed eyes, quiet hostility. The other, the side that had once clapped when she walked dogs through the farmer's market or waved when she handed out flyers for obedience classes, was silent now. The first blow came from a local news blog known for its community spotlights and clickbait controversy. The headline read, "Dog trainer or disruptor local woman stirs anti-police sentiment." The article twisted her story. It described her as combative, her video as accusatory, and even questioned whether Holt's dog had ever growled. The blog had no byline, but Maya recognized the voice behind the words. It was someone with ties to the department. Amara sat in her living room that night, the soft hum of the TV muted as her phone buzzed with anonymous messages. "You should be ashamed. Go back to where you came from. No one wants your kind starting fires here." Clients began canceling sessions at her center. Some claimed it was scheduling conflicts. Others stopped responding altogether. The parking lot was emptier each day. Flyers that once brought in new dog owners now went untouched. Even the grocery store felt different. People who once chatted warmly with her now looked through her like glass. Worse still, Maya was feeling the pressure. "I've been warned," Maya said over the phone one night. "My editor said my tone is too confrontational and wants me to pull the Holt story." "Are you going to?" Amara asked. "No," Maya said without pause, "but they're going to make it hell." The walls were closing in. Every step Amara took forward seemed to trigger another form of retaliation. Officer Barnes passed by her center more frequently now, never stopping just slow enough to make sure she saw his face. Then came the phone call from Elijah's school. "Miss Jenkins, there's been an incident." A boy in his class had called Elijah a cop-hater's kid. When Elijah told the teacher, she told him to focus on his work and ignore it. When Amara confronted the administration, they said it would be handled internally. Handled internally, just like her complaint. The straw that broke her, though, came one night after closing. She was walking to her car in the fading gold of twilight when she saw the slashed tires. All four, deep cuts, clean, malicious. She stood there, holding her keys, her breath heavy in the air. No note this time, no witnesses. Just silence. And in that silence, a flicker of fear. She checked the center's security camera footage. Someone had disabled the system earlier that day. No footage, no faces. Elijah was asleep when she got home. She watched him for a long time from the doorway, his chest rising and falling, unaware of how the world outside his dreams was shifting against them. Amara sat at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. Doubt whispered in her ear. "You're just one woman. What did you think would happen?" But then she remembered the morning in the park. Koda's growl. Holt's face. And the message behind it all. She hadn't imagined it. And she hadn't imagined how quickly the world around her was willing to believe the worst about her. Maya visited the next day. "Things are getting ugly," Amara said as they sat on the back porch. "People are acting like I set the fire when all I did was point to the smoke." Maya exhaled slowly. "They'd rather believe you're dangerous than admit someone like Holt's been protected all this time." "I'm scared," Amara admitted, voice trembling. "That means you're doing something right." Amara laughed softly, bitter and tired. But even through the fear, even through the loneliness, she didn't waver. She looked out at the backyard where Elijah's bike leaned against the fence, where she used to host puppy training groups, now empty. "They think they can shut me up," she said quietly, "but I've come too far for that." "They don't just want you to be silent," Maya replied. "They want you to disappear." "Well," Amara said, standing, "they'll have to try a lot harder." She knew the storm wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But the fire inside her, born from pain, powered by purpose, was brighter than their shadows. And if she had to walk this path alone, so be it. She was no stranger to solitude. But this time the silence wasn't for survival. It was the calm before her own strike. The town hall meeting was supposed to be her moment of truth. Flyers had gone out. Maya helped her craft a speech measured, emotional, rooted in facts. Amara rehearsed in the mirror, speaking not just as a trainer or a mother, but as someone who'd been tested. She would stand up during the open forum call, out Holt's misconduct, publicly demand accountability. She hoped it would light a fire in the community. But Holt was ahead of her. 2 hours before the meeting, a video surfaced online. The caption read, "Local woman threatens police officer in public, caught on camera." In the video, Amara was shown in the park shouting. Her words were cut mid-sentence, distorted. The clip froze on a frame of her pointing face, tight with frustration. There was no sound of Holt's voice, no footage of Koda lunging, just her isolated and angry, edited to fit a narrative. By the time she arrived at the town hall, the buzz had already begun. People turned when she walked in, some whispering, others glaring. A woman she didn't recognize muttered disgraceful, loud enough for Amara to hear. The mayor glanced at her from the podium with a flicker of discomfort before refocusing on the agenda. Amara sat back straight, face calm, hands clenched tightly in her lap. Maya rushed in a few minutes later, phone in hand. "It's spreading fast," she whispered. "Local Facebook pages, Reddit, even the school board's been tagged." "Who posted it?" "No username. Just says, concerned citizen. But it reeks of Holt." Amara swallowed hard, fire rising in her throat. She could feel the old weight creeping back and the urge to stay quiet to not make things worse. But she had crossed that line already. There was no going back. When the public comment session began, Amara stood. Her voice at first was steady. She spoke about her history with the department, about Holt's intimidation, about the pain of being turned into a villain for daring to speak up. Some people listened. Some rolled their eyes. One man in the back stood up mid-sentence and walked out. Then a woman stood. Blonde, soft-spoken. "I saw that video," she said. "You were yelling. You looked threatening. I'm sorry, but I have children. I want to feel safe in my town." Amara didn't reply. There was nothing she could say that would matter to people like her. The meeting ended in quiet tension. When Amara walked outside, her car had been egged. Shells dripped down her windshield yoke, thick and sticky under the summer heat. Someone had scratched the word liar into the driver's door. Maya helped clean it off as best they could, both of them silent under the streetlights. The next morning, her center was vandalized. Spray paint across the windows in bold red letters. Defund the trainer, police hater, get out. Her front door had been kicked in. The reception area trashed, dog beds, slashed drawers, pulled open files scattered like dead leaves. Her heart broke as she looked around. The center had been her sanctuary, her proof that she could create something good. Now it looked like a war zone. The police report was half-hearted at best. Officer Barnes took notes but didn't hide his smirk. No cameras caught anything he asked, glancing at the broken security system. "Yours don't either," Amara shot back. He said nothing. After he left, Amara stood in the ruins of her business alone. Karma, her senior rescue dog, nudged her leg softly, sensing the grief. She sat on the torn rug and pressed her face into Karma's fur. She didn't cry. She was beyond that now. That afternoon, a parent pulled their child from her obedience program. That evening, Elijah came home quiet. When she pressed him, he whispered, "They said you hate cops, that you're dangerous. Is it true?" Amara dropped to her knees and looked him in the eyes. "I don't hate anyone. I hate lies. I hate fear. And I hate when people use power to hurt others." He didn't say anything, just leaned against her, small and worried. The following days brought more silence than words. Maya's article was buried under a wave of disinformation. Amara's video responses were flagged and taken down. One local radio station discussed her like a cautionary tale activist with hidden agendas. Her reputation was unraveling in real time. She had never felt so alone. On the third day, she found a printed photo taped to her door. It was her face, eyes mid-blink with the words, "unstable. Not safe around animals or children," scrawled underneath. Still, Amara refused to disappear. She reached out to civil rights groups. She started gathering testimonies from clients who supported her. But every step forward seemed to trigger more hate. Her inbox flooded with threats. Some were specific times, places, names of people she cared about. Then silence from Maya. For 2 whole days. No texts, no calls, no updates. On the third day, Amara drove to Maya's apartment. Lights off, mail overflowing in the box. Panic tightened her chest. She called, no answer. She called again. Finally, a text appeared. "I'm okay. They came to my job. I'm laying low for a bit. I'm sorry, Amara. I can't lose everything." Amara stood frozen outside the apartment door. Not angry, just tired. Deep bone-level tired. Another ally gone. And yet she couldn't stop. She looked down at Karma, whose gentle eyes held none of the judgment the world had poured over her in the past few weeks. "Guess it's just us again," she whispered. But she wasn't finished. Because even when the world roared against her, Amara Jenkins had never once stopped listening to her gut. And it told her the truth was still worth fighting for, even if no one else believed it. Yet. A week passed. The silence around Amara felt like a storm pressing against glass, thick, suffocating, about to break. She stayed quiet, not because she had nothing left to say, but because she was watching, waiting, calculating. The damage to her center had been repaired slowly with help from a few loyal clients and an anonymous donation that covered the window replacements. She didn't know who sent it, only that it had come with a simple note, "Stay loud. We see you." Then Maya called. "I have something." Her voice was sharp again, steady, fire returned. "I found the original source of that viral clip," she continued. "It was uploaded from a burner account, but I traced the IP address to a department computer. Guess whose desk? Holt's." "Exactly. And there's more. I pulled old footage from the regional K-9 training seminar. Remember the one 4 years ago? You volunteered to help work with the high-drive dogs." Amara remembered vividly. Long before Koda wore a police vest, he was one of the most difficult dogs in the program, reactive, anxious. She'd spent weeks earning his trust. She taught him to sit, to stay, to listen. Maya sent over the footage. It showed Amara calm and focused working with Koda, the same dog that now stood at Holt's side snarling on command. But the real shift came that Thursday morning. Holt showed up at her center again, unannounced, Koda at his side. He didn't speak. He just stood at the curb, sunglasses, hiding his expression, hand resting on the dog's back. Amara stepped outside. Her heart pounded, but she kept her posture strong. Koda's ears twitched. His head tilted. Recognition bloomed in his body like sunlight cracking through cloud. He stepped forward. Holt tugged the leash back, but Koda refused. He walked to Amara, tail wagging slowly, then sat at her feet. People nearby pulled out phones. "Sit," Amara said. Koda obeyed. Holt heel. Nothing. The dog stayed with her. The power of that moment was seismic. Someone across the street captured it all. Holt's angry posture, Koda's loyalty, Amara's quiet command. The clip hit social media that night and exploded. Unlike the manipulated one, this video wasn't edited, wasn't aggressive. It was undeniable. A dog trained to obey Holt had chosen Amara. The caption read, "K9 knows the truth." In just 24 hours, the tide began to turn. The local paper picked it up. Maya published her expose with documents, complaint records, and the IP address linked to Holt. She didn't wait for editorial approval. She posted it herself on her own blog titled, "When the system fails, the dog still sees clearly." Support poured in. Former clients spoke out in her defense. A retired police officer anonymously confirmed Holt's behavior had been an open secret for years. One brave mother came forward to share how Holt had once pulled her teen son over 3 times in 1 week. People began to ask questions. Why was the footage of Amara edited? Why were complaints buried? And why did the dog obey the so-called threat over his own handler? The story no longer belonged to Amara alone. It belonged to everyone who had ever been dismissed, intimidated, erased. It belonged to the truth. And the truth at last was being heard. The town council chamber was packed. Not with protesters, not with supporters, with witnesses, real ones. People who had stayed quiet for years began to speak. A retired school teacher described Holt's aggressive traffic stops of black students. A former dispatcher admitted that some of Holt's incident reports had been altered to remove language that would reflect poorly on the department. A young man visibly shaking told the room how Holt once pointed a taser at him for asking why he was being followed home. Each voice added another thread to the fabric Maya had started to stitch together. Each story made it impossible to look away. Amara sat near the front, Elijah beside her. He held her hand tightly, his eyes wide but unafraid. Koda, now officially retired and recently rehomed to Amara's care, lay quietly at her feet, a living contradiction to every lie that had been told. When Amara took the stand at the public hearing, the room hushed. She played the full, unedited video from that morning in the park. The raw footage showed everything: Holt's slur-laced threats, the slack leash, the growling dog lunging forward. The difference between that and the doctored version was chilling. Then came the footage from the training seminar, a younger Koda, unsure, pacing until Amara knelt and whispered, "It's okay, I've got you." He responded then as he had now. She ended her testimony with a single sentence. "If a dog trained to protect the law can see the truth in me, why couldn't you?" The chamber fell silent. The council had no choice but to act. A formal investigation was launched into Holt's conduct and the broader practices of the department. Public pressure surged. The mayor, once silent, now called for oversight reform. And the most symbolic act of all, Koda was removed from Holt's custody and entrusted permanently to Amara's center. It was more than just justice. It was acknowledgement. Proof that something sacred had been broken and someone brave enough had made the system look at it. Holt was suspended from duty pending the full investigation. No badge, no weapon, no dog. The announcement came quietly with no press conference, no admission of wrongdoing, just a short, public notice that he was under review. It wasn't handcuffs or a public apology, but it was a start. The hearing was over. The headlines faded. People returned to their routines. But Amara's life didn't return to what it was before. Her name had been cleared publicly. Koda was now a part of her team, working gently with the dog. She rehabilitated a calming presence at her side, but the center was still recovering. Half her old clients never came back. Some whispered their support, but stayed distant. Sponsors disappeared. A grant for community outreach she'd applied for was quietly reallocated. Then there was Elijah. He'd stopped talking at school. The counselor said he was anxious. The same children who once played at their house now avoided him. Their parents didn't call anymore. One afternoon, Amara found a drawing tucked into his backpack. It was of her, standing alone in the rain. The words in the corner, "Don't fight anymore, Mom." She sat down that night, held him close, and whispered, Sometimes doing what's right makes people uncomfortable, but I did it to protect you, even if it cost me everything." He nodded but didn't look up. Amara knew she had made the right choice, but the consequences were deep, financially, emotionally, spiritually. She felt it in the quiet mornings when she stood in the empty center lobby, in the way her voice hesitated before answering unfamiliar calls, in the slow exhaustion that settled behind her eyes. People called her brave, they called her strong, but they didn't always call her safe. And so she stepped back, not out of fear but for healing. She scaled down her programs, stopped media interviews, and spent her days training dogs with her small team. Koda, now older, would sit in the sun beside her, still and loyal. The fight had left its scars. Justice had arrived, fractured and incomplete. But Amara was still standing, and that too was a kind of victory. Change didn't come with fireworks. It came slowly, like spring thawing frozen ground, small shifts beneath the surface. A month after the hearing, the Springfield Heights Police Department announced mandatory bias training for all officers. It wasn't everything Amara had hoped for, but it was a crack in the foundation. Community members demanded the creation of an independent civilian oversight board. The mayor, once reluctant now, stood behind the podium promising transparency. Maya's reporting went national. Her blog post was republished by major news outlets, sparking similar conversations in nearby towns. Parents in the school district formed a committee to review diversity and anti-bullying policies, citing Elijah's experience as a wake-up call. And then the petition began. Started by a young activist named Tamika, one of Amara's former students, it called for the state legislature to review complaint handling procedures for police misconduct. Thousands signed it. Amara's story had given it weight. Her pain had given it urgency. Back at the center, clients slowly returned. First in ones and twos, people who had stood silently before but now offered quiet apologies and eager hands. They came not because the story had ended, but because they now understood it wasn't just about a dog trainer and a cop. It was about what kind of town they wanted to live in. Koda became more than a retired police dog. He was a symbol. His story was shared in classrooms, community forums, even at a local art exhibit titled, "Who Do You Trust?" featuring photos of Amara and Koda side-by-side, eyes locked in quiet understanding. Amara never gave another formal interview, but she made one public appearance at a community march, organized in memory of those harmed by police abuse. She didn't speak into a microphone. She didn't hold a sign. She simply walked, holding Elijah's hand with Koda pacing at their side. They stopped at the memorial wall downtown, names etched in stone, some familiar, some not. Amara knelt and placed a single sunflower beneath Marcus Jenkins' name, added after the town formally recognized his case as one of historic mishandling. She stood back up slowly, the crowd still around her reverent. That image, Amara, hand on Koda's neck, eyes closed, was captured by a local photographer. It was later displayed in the town library under the title, "Truth Does Not Bark at Standstill." Amara didn't need applause. She didn't need headlines anymore. She had walked through the fire. She had planted something in the ashes. And now others were learning how to water it. Amara Jenkins' story didn't end with a courtroom verdict or a press release. It lives in every young person who dares to question power, in every parent who teaches their child the difference between respect and submission, in every community that chooses to listen rather than label. Her life returned to a quieter rhythm, but the echoes of her stand continued to ripple. Schools invited guest speakers to talk about justice and equity. Local libraries added books on systemic racism to their shelves. And every spring, the town hosted a community day of truth at the park, yes, that park where residents shared stories, offered resources, and celebrated the courage of speaking up. Amara never returned to the spotlight, but her legacy didn't need her face anymore. She had become something larger, an example of what happens when one person refuses to accept silence as the cost of survival. Young trainers at her center often asked her, "How did you know Koda would listen to you that day?" Amara would smile and say, "I didn't. I just showed him who I was, and he remembered." She knew the world wasn't healed. Her son still came home with questions that no child should have to ask. Her center still faced veiled resistance from parts of the town that hadn't changed. But every time someone brought a frightened dog to her door, trusting her to help, she remembered why she stood up in the first place. Because trust is built in action. Because love is louder than fear. Because dogs like people know when someone is walking in truth. To you reading this, what will you do with this story? Will you stand when it's easier to sit, speak when it's easier to be quiet? Will you choose to trust what you know is right, even when the world snarls back? Amara's courage didn't come from being fearless. It came from knowing the cost of staying silent. As she told a group of students during a quiet visit to a local high school, dogs don't see color, they see energy, they see fear, they see love. Be the kind of person a dog would trust to follow. Her words became more than a quote. They became a challenge. To be steady, to be just, to be human in the face of cruelty. Now it's your turn. Share this story. Comment your thoughts. Subscribe to the Black Women channel. Let the world know Black women are not just surviving, we are leading, healing, transforming. This is not the end. This is a beginning.